Hi everyone, welcome back to Brianna's Bookshelf. So today I'm going to be talking about my favorite books that I read in 2025. And I don't quite have 10, I have I think 11 or 12, but you know, it was just too hard to narrow it down to 10, so you gotta give me a little break on that one, but I did my best. And I have so many new favorites to talk about from this year. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. So most of these books are going to be in no particular order, save the last four. I do have like a top four that I was choosing between. So those will be at the end, but everything before that is just in whatever order, nothing particular. I love them all. And the first one is Reign of Shadows and Endings by Melissa K. Roehrich. And this is a dark fantasy romance, and this was the first book in the series, and this really made me fall in love with this series and become so interested in it. In this book, we have a few different types of magical beings. We have Fae. Our main character, Tessa, is a Fae, and then there are also the Legacy, which are like a step above the Fae, and our male main character, Theon, is a Legacy. And Tessa ends up being assigned to Theon as his personal power source, which is something that the Legacy can have from Fae, and kind of this servitude role that they get into. But Tessa wants nothing to do with this, so they are in a extremely rocky situation right from the start, where the two of them do not like each other at all. This is, I would say, a really good representation of enemies to lovers, where they are truly enemies. And by the end of book one, like, they still don't like each other. And I just ate that up. Like, I want the enemies to be enemies, you know? I don't want it to just be like, oh, we got off on the wrong foot for 1 minute. They're seriously enemies. And this book is quite dark, I will say. So I think a lot of people don't love it because of, I guess, like, the kind of interactions between the two main characters and the power dynamic between them. So please just know that if you are going to end up going into this one, to help you decide whether or not you might like it. Then I have Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker. And this was a stunning horror novel from earlier this year, came out early this year in 2025. And I have my lovely Evernight edition with these sprayed edges with the bats. This is following Cora, and Cora is an Asian American woman during COVID. So that is a very interesting setup for this book. Is, first of all, I don't particularly like reading COVID books, but I feel like this one was done very well, and the setting of it being during that time period made a lot of sense, and it had a lot to say about that time period. So Cora is a crime scene cleaner, and her sister ends up being murdered in an act of hate against Asian Americans. And so this was something that was real and present during the COVID pandemic. And this book really goes in depth onto what it was like to experience that hate. And Cora, in her crime scene cleaning, she starts to recognize the pattern of more and more Asian women being murdered. And then we also have some mythology that's tied into this, as well as there is a little bit of hungry ghost lore as well. So I feel like this was a horror book that just had a lot to say, and I really appreciated that, and I thought it was a fabulous read. Next up, I have Hunting Prince Dracula, which is kind of funny because another book in this series was on my worst books of 2025, but you know, we have duality here, right? Hunting Prince Dracula is the second book in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series by Kerri Maniscalco, and this series is basically about our female main character, Audrey Rose, and she is studying to become a mortician under her uncle during the late 1800s. And Audrey is our feminist icon. She is breaking the mold. She wants to be a mortician, even though that is not proper for ladies her age, and I love her for that. And she ends up meeting Thomas Cresswell, who is also studying under her uncle, and the two of them form a friendship and then a bit of a relationship as they start to investigate different mysteries together. And so in this second novel, they are traveling to Romania together in order to attend another mortuary school. And once they get there, they discover there has been a kind of incident of murders in which the victims seem to have been attacked by Dracula. So they have to dive into that and see what's really going on, and their relationship is developing further in this book. And I would say that Audrey Rose and Thomas Cresswell were at their peak to me in this book. I tabbed a ton of quotes in this. It was just super cutie patootie, but still had like a gothic horror type atmosphere. So it just really had everything that I wanted from it. Then kind of a 2-for-1 here. I read The Dragon Republic and The Burning God in 2025. So finishing out the Poppy War trilogy. And I won't really go into what these books are about in case you have not read the first one, but in this trilogy we are following Rin, and she lives in this small kind of poor province where a lot of people are addicted to opium. That is like a big issue in their kingdom, and she really wants to escape her day-to-day life, and the only way she knows to be able to do that is to be sent to this national war college. So she puts everything she has into studying to go to this college, and she is able to make it and attend it. And from there, this is a war story. It's extremely brutal, it's extremely heartbreaking, but it is magnificently written. R.F. Kuang just does it every time and knocks it out of the park. All of these books had me crying. This series will wrench your heart out, but it will be so worth it because it is so beautiful, there's so much meaning, and it really makes you feel for these characters and feel like even if they aren't the best people, you're still rooting for them at times and you care deeply about what happens to them. And I think that that is a really magical thing that R.F. Kuang has been able to do to make you care so deeply for these characters. Then I have Jawbone by Monica Ojeda. And I actually gave this one 4.5 stars. I think this might be my only one under 5 stars on this list, but it was still a favorite because basically in this book we have 2 different perspectives, and one of them is chef's kiss. I loved it. The other one is like not my favorite, but I still enjoyed it. And so that's the reason that it wasn't a 5-star, but like the aspect that I liked was so good that it still makes it onto the favorites, if that makes sense. So in this book, we are following Fernanda, and Fernanda goes to an all-girls high school, and she has this group of friends, and they are all very daring. They really like to push the envelope. They are constantly like reading horror books, watching horror movies. They have kind of this secret hangout spot together, and they like to dare each other to do increasingly strange or dangerous activities. So they are a very interesting group of girls. And then on the other hand, we have Miss Clara, who is one of their teachers at their high school. And Miss Clara has a lot of different issues and kind of oddities about her as well. She's got some serious mommy issues in a pretty weird way. And she also has like past trauma of being kidnapped by previous students that she taught at a different school. So we're kind of alternating chapters between Fernanda and Miss Clara's perspectives. And it's just such an interesting read. It's kind of, there's not like a super strong plot in this one, I would say. Well, there is, but there's also a lot of like going back and forth and hearing different people's perspectives about different things that happen. And I loved reading from Fernanda's perspective so much. Her and her group of friends are just so interesting to me to read about. And although they were quite extreme and some things that they got into were pretty strange, I would say like the whole sentiment of their friendship really did remind me of being a teenage girl and what it's like to want to push the envelope or be someone different, do something strange and be unique. And yeah, I could really resonate with that, even though I didn't have the same experiences as these girls, but it really connected for me. And this is one that I'm gonna remember and think about for a very long time. Next up is If We Were Villains by M L Rio. Now this is kind of a dark academia classic, so I'm surprised it took me until this year to pick this up because I am a dark academia lover, and this definitely did not disappoint. So in If We Were Villains, we are following this group of theater students who go to this small liberal arts college together. And they are, I believe, in their final year, and they are doing one last Shakespeare play all together as a group. And as they're putting this play on, they all start to kind of lose a little bit of touch with reality as they get so pulled into the world of the play. And yeah, they all kind of spiral a little bit, and it's so interesting to watch. They also like all live together, I believe, or all in the same dorm, like not in the same rooms necessarily though. So watching their interactions as they start to spiral out is very, very interesting. And there ends up being this tragedy that occurs, and we are going back and reviewing the events to see how they ended up there. And this has incredible atmosphere. The academia vibes were so good, but something I hadn't read before was having them be theater students, because they were constantly like quoting Shakespeare, like they would speak to each other at times in Shakespeare quotes, which is, I thought, was so interesting as someone who has read some Shakespeare in school but didn't necessarily understand it to the degree that these students do. Like they fully understand it and are able to convey their true sentiments through these quotes, which I thought was just incredibly interesting, and that was one of my favorite parts of the book. It also just has such a creepy and like cold and distraught kind of atmosphere, which is usually everything that I enjoy in a dark academia book. So this was a winner for sure. Next up is The Witch's Heart, and this is by Genevieve Gornichec, and this is a mythology retelling. And specifically, this is a Norse mythology retelling, which is part of what grabbed my attention, because I've read a ton of Greek mythology retellings. I feel like that's super popular, but I don't think I had ever read a Norse mythology retelling. And in this one, we are following Angerboda, and she is kind of like this witch type figure who lives in the realm of the gods with all of the Norse gods that you've heard of before, like Odin and Thor. And she ends up being cast out basically from this kingdom and set upon one of the lower realms. And when she gets there, she kind of loses touch with her powers, and she is forced to survive this solitary existence, living basically in a cave in the forest. So this is an interesting one because it's a slow pace to it, where a lot of it is us just following Angerboda as she's living in this forest, as she's kind of reflecting on what has happened to her thus far and how she survived to this point. And then she does end up making some friends with folks that live nearby, and she ends up also meeting and forming a relationship with the trickster god Loki. Now, I would not say this is a romance though. Their relationship is really not romantic at all. It's fairly tragic, I would say. We're kind of hurtling closer and closer to this fate that Angerboda is tied to, that she can't seem to get away from. And yeah, this was a powerful one. It made me feel so much. I loved Angerboda's character. I thought she was incredible, and it was so enjoyable to read about her story. Okay, we're in the final four, and I think I'm gonna try to narrow these down to like 4 through 1. I mean, honestly, given a different day, these, like, the ordering could change. These are all so good, but I'm gonna attempt to give you my 4th through 1st favorite books of the year. So coming in spot number 4 was City of Gods and Monsters by Kayla Edwards. And this is the first book in a urban fantasy romance series. And in this series, we have an urban setting, which I love, and so many different magical creatures, which is always a fun time. There's fae, witches, vampires, werewolves, the whole 9 yards. And our main character is a human who lives in this city. Her name is Loren. And so she has kind of always had to deal with that fact that she is at a disadvantage because she doesn't have any powers. She's very looked down upon. But one day her friend actually gets kidnapped, and Loren later finds out that it was her who was meant to be kidnapped, not her friend. And she's very confused by this because she has no idea why someone would want to kidnap her, much less who has done this. And she ends up teaming up with Darien Castle, and he is the head of the House of Devils, which is one of the dark slang groups basically within the city. And what that means in this world is that he is a magical bounty hunter. And so from then, the two of them are looking into this mystery together. Everyone is basically after Loren. Darien has to protect her, and the two of them are just such cutie patooties. I love their relationship. Loren is so cute because she's not like your typical fantasy heroine of being extremely like tough and she can do anything. Like, don't get me wrong, Loren has a lot of strength in her own way, but she's also very soft and she's not afraid to admit when she needs help or to be protected. And I really appreciated that because obviously a lot of us want to strive to be strong and independent, but that might not always be the case. And it's nice to see someone who is a little bit more down to earth and relatable at times as our main character. And Darien was just such a fabulous book boyfriend. He is probably my new favorite book boyfriend from the year. He just will do anything to protect Loren, and his whole friend group is incredible. There's amazing found family. I can't say enough. I feel like more people need to read this series and get on it. There's 4 books and I think it's ongoing, so it's very exciting. Coming in at number 3, we have Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Bazterrica. Now, this is a horror novel which is about basically a world where animal meat becomes poisonous to humans because of this disease. And so everyone is forced to not eat animals, but do they become vegetarians? No, they do not. They become cannibals. And so they start to have like people breeding farms, people slaughterhouses, and it's very interesting to read about because the way that society has to kind of reorganize and like, I guess like make up new terminology in order to distance themselves from what's happening is so strange, but felt so realistic. So like no one wants to outright say like we are eating human. They call it special meat. And everyone is completely like turning a blind eye to what's happening. Like they do know what's happening, but they do not speak it out loud to each other. It is not socially appropriate. And our main character, he actually works for one of the slaughterhouses. And so he is much more in touch with what is actually happening. He's much more tied into the reality of the situation. And it's just extremely interesting to read about. This is a really brutal one though, so I would only recommend this to folks that are okay with body horror and reading about cannibalism, but this had such a big impact on me, and frankly it felt so realistic, which made it even creepier. Coming in at my second favorite of the year, we have We Love You Bunny by Mona Awad. I feel like this is going to be unpopular that this is so high up on my list because I feel like a lot of people hated this, but I loved it, okay? So this is the follow-up to Bunny by Mona Awad, and in that book we are following our main character Samantha, who goes to this liberal arts college and is in a fiction writing program with 4 other girls. And these 4 other girls are very cliquish and they all call each other Bunny. And Samantha gets kind of pulled into their group. It's all very cult-like, it's very dreamy, kind of like lose touch of what's reality and what's not. It's just an incredible book. I know that one is so popular. The follow-up is these 4 girls kind of telling Samantha what happened from their own perspective. And so we get to go back and revisit the events, but see them through a different lens. And it was certainly extremely different from Bunny, I would say. Like the tone was very different, the writing style. So I can see why some people didn't like it, but I loved it. I was so happy to revisit this world, and we got the perspective of a new character who we didn't get to hear from in the first book. If you've read this, you'll know what I'm talking about. And he was so funny. I was dying during his parts, and I just love kind of the leap that Mona Awad took to write from that perspective and make it so different. I just thought it was brilliant. I loved it. It was incredible, and I had so much fun reading this. Then my favorite book of 2025, drum roll please, was Tear by Erica McKeen, which is probably no surprise to anyone who watches my videos because I feel like I talk about this in every single recommendations video that I do, but this is just fabulous. And I wanted to give a shout out to Sarah at Wicked Reading because she is the person who I heard about this book from, and thank you, Sarah. It's incredible. I loved it. And in Terror, we are following Frances, who is a student at a university, and she lives in off-campus housing with this group of girls, and she lives in the basement room of the house. However, Frances is very much like not interested in what's going on in her current life. She doesn't really ever discuss school or the other girls that she lives with. She's very much just kind of sitting in her room and ruminating on the past. So she's discussing different things that have happened throughout her life. There's this very like hazy, nostalgic tone to all these stories that really just make you feel like you have been there in those situations, even when you haven't, but it really makes you recall like your own childhood. I don't know, it's very weird. I don't know how Erica McKeen was able to do that so well. But yes, Frances is gradually going through some derealization and basically spacing out of reality. And she ends up not being able to leave her room when she tries to one day. So then she isn't sure if she's locked in her room or what is going on, and her kind of delusions start to spiral out of control. So this is a very interesting horror novel, very experimental, indie, weird girl, all of that. So if you like those things, I would definitely try this because this needs to be way more popular than it is. I am obsessed with this book. I would love it if more people read it, and if you read it, please talk to me about it because it's incredible. Those were my favorite books that I read in 2025. I can't wait to hear from all of you about what your favorite books of 2025 were. So if you want to tell me in the comments, please do. If you are posting a video about your favorite books, please let me know. I want to go check it out. And thank you all so much for watching. Bye.